Hey guys, Johnny here coming at you with another video on how to improve your YouTube channel. I've decided to make a short series of very short targeted videos, each addressing a very common topic that people discuss when it comes to improving the quality of your content and all that kind of thing. And coming from a place not of authority, since I'm relatively new as well, but coming from a place of we're all in the same boat, we're all avid content creators, and hopefully all the effort and dedication that I've put on my side you can reinvest on your side, just smarter and with more information. So with that out of the way, today we're addressing perhaps one of the first entry points, which is video capture. Right, there's basically two stages to your footage. One is video capture, and then the other one is editing and rendering, which we're gonna cover in a separate video. And also some people use the capture as their final format that they then upload to YouTube, and we're also gonna cover that at the very end of the video. But generally we're gonna work under the assumption that we're gonna have that two-stage pipeline, where first step is going to be capturing and second step is going to be treating the video and preparing it for the upload. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I'm using OBS. I've tried a few different systems to capture video. For me, OBS is also, apart from free, it actually works very well and gives me very crisp video. So let me remove my mug from the scene. Let me give you my OBS view. I apologize for the Inception view we have going on here, but let's take a look at the settings here. So today we're talking about video capture, so we're gonna disregard audio for today because there's also a lot to talk about in that scene. So let's we're not gonna talk about streaming either, just recording. So we're talking about recording high quality high definition footage. So the way I'm rolling right now is I'm using the X264 encoder. This uses your CPU mainly, and I can get away with this because I have a pretty powerful CPU. If that's not the case for you, then you need to use the other encoder. I forget the name. I think it's H264. But it's actually a different encoder depending on whether you're packing an NVIDIA card or an AMD card. But either way, that other encoder will use your GPU to encode the video instead of your CPU. And so depending on what the bottleneck is in your system, if you have a very strong CPU compared to your GPU, you might want to do what I'm doing here. And the other way around, if your GPU is actually pretty powerful, then you might just want to use that for the encoding. Regardless, the settings we have here are pretty simple. The only thing I'm gonna comment is the rate control, because this is not gonna be the final format we're gonna upload to YouTube. We're not concerned with the file size, right? I'm gonna assume that you have enough space in your hard drive to deal with any file we produce here. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing a 1080p 30 FPS format, because that's what my upload speed currently can operate well under. So if you're doing 60 FPS or if you're doing higher resolutions, this will vary for you and you're gonna need a higher bit rate. But let's just operate under 1080p 30 FPS, which I think is a good kind of benchmark for people starting off. And what I'm doing here is I'm doing 30,000 bits per second, and kilobits per second. And this is just, it's not a specific number, but this is just like a high enough bit rate that any loss coming from the rendering is not something that's going to be very noticeable at all. If you start off with like a lower bit rate and then you also obviously compress again when you're rendering after editing the video, those two compressions may incur losses in quality, and if the starting quality is not high enough, then that is gonna be way more noticeable. So it's very important that our original video is very high quality, and I recommend 30 megabits per second or upwards of that. It's what I'm going with. It works very well for me. I'm using the very fast setting, and because we don't care about size, I'm using constant bit rate. The only difference, again, you have, not again, I haven't actually touched on this, but you usually have CBR or a VBR. First one being constant bit rate versus variable bit rate. Now this only comes into play when you're worrying about file size mainly. The constant bit rate will maintain the same bit rate throughout the entire video, whereas the VBR option will actually have an average bit rate, but it will vary depending on how much is necessary, how much information is necessary to represent the image correctly. So that your bitrate will fluctuate throughout the video, and what that does is that it produces a smaller size file than the CBR does. But again, since we're only worried about quality here, we can just go for the CBR. Will give us very high quality video, and just kind of no worries there. I'm using the very fast option because I want just non-stutter, crisp video, and that works very well for me. So these are my settings. If you switch to the other encoder, the one I mentioned where you're using your GPU, the settings are very similar. You don't have to concern yourself with anything extra that I haven't discussed. The naming might be a little bit different, but it shouldn't be a problem. The difference is I've found this encoder, the X264, actually gets way better image quality with a lower bitrate comparatively to the other encoder. So my recommendation is, first, think of what is play to the strengths of your rig. If your rig has a very powerful CPU, I would go for this encoder. If you have a very powerful GPU, try out the other encoder, the one that uses your GPU for the encoding. And just try both out and make sure that the video you're producing is very high quality. There's no stutter. One of the things that immediately puts people out of watching a video is seeing any form of stutter or framiness. That is absolutely a no-go, and make sure you run enough tests prior to recording an actual video that you're confident you're generating very high quality footage. So yeah, that's it for me. There aren't any other settings that I want to cover in terms of video today. So we're gonna cut it here. We're gonna cover video rendering and what the actual format for YouTube is. And since I did kind of say I would touch on this, I will just say for 1080p at 30 FPS, I generally target uploading 10 megabits per second as my bitrate. And I use a variable bitrate encoding as well. So you can take that home with you, but I recommend you Google these numbers anyways, because depending who you ask, they're gonna give you a different number. YouTube recommends actually 8 megabits per second for 1080p 30 FPS. I have found it's better to give them more than that because there is a little bit of compression, nasty compression going on the YouTube side. So pump enough goodness into the YouTube crap filter so that at the end there's still something very high quality for the viewer. So again, I'm gonna leave it here for today. Thank you for watching. Let me know any thoughts below. Let's start a conversation. And as always, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.